In 1950, two brothers cutting peat in a Danish bog found a face so perfectly preserved they called the police. The man had been dead for 2,400 years. The rope was still around his neck, and the people who killed him had closed his eyes before they walked away. His DNA has been destroyed by the same acid that kept his skin intact. Science can tell us exactly how he died. It cannot tell us why. Tollund man. The face that should not exist. He looks like he is sleeping. That is the first thing everyone says. The closed eyes, the slight compression of the lips that resembles from certain angles something close to a smile, the fine lines around his mouth, the stubble on his chin. He does not look like a man who has been dead for 2,400 years. He looks like a man who lay down in the Danish countryside an hour ago and has not yet woken up. But look closer. Look at his neck. There is a braided leather rope drawn tight around his throat. It has been pulled with enough force to close the airway completely. The noose is still in place, looped behind his left ear, trailing down his back, preserved with the same impossible clarity as the rest of him. His neck shows the groove where the rope bit into the skin. The vertebrae beneath are intact, which means he was not dropped from a height. He was not hanged the way executions are performed. He was strangled, slowly, deliberately, by someone standing close enough to watch the life leave his face. And then whoever did it placed him carefully into a peat bog in central Denmark, positioned his body, closed his eyes, and walked away. That was approximately 405 BCE. The Roman Republic had not yet reached its peak. Athens was still a functioning democracy, and in a stretch of wetland on the Jutland Peninsula, someone killed a man with considerable care and then buried him with what can only be described as tenderness. The bog did not destroy him. The bog kept him. And in May 1950, two brothers cutting peat for fuel near the village of Silkeborg pulled the most perfectly preserved ancient human face ever found out of the black water and into the 20th century. His name is Tollund man. He has no other name. And the forensic investigation of his death has revealed something that no one expected. Not a simple murder, not a simple sacrifice, but something that sits in the space between violence and reverence, between punishment and honor, in a way that modern categories cannot comfortably contain. The preservation is the first mystery, and the science behind it is as precise as the science behind the death. Peat bogs are not ordinary wetlands. They are anaerobic environments, almost no dissolved oxygen. Remove the oxygen and you remove the mechanism of decay itself. But the bog does more than pause decomposition. The sphagnum moss releases sphagnin, a polysaccharide that tans human skin the way a leatherworker tans animal hide. The humic acid stains the tissue deep brown while sterilizing it against bacterial colonization. The result is natural embalming that preserves soft tissue, skin, hair, fingernails, internal organs, stomach contents, with a fidelity that rivals deliberate mummification. Tollund man's fingerprints are still readable. The pores of his skin are visible under magnification. The wrinkles on his forehead are the wrinkles he carried in life. But the bog preserves selectively. It keeps soft tissue and destroys bone. The same acidic chemistry that tans the skin dissolves calcium. Tollund man's skeleton is largely demineralized. His bones have the consistency of wet rubber. His skull, when the body was first examined, could be compressed with gentle hand pressure. This selective preservation has a direct consequence for forensic investigation. The soft tissue tells us almost everything about his surface, his face, his skin, his hair, his last meal. The bones tell us almost nothing about his deeper biology. No reliable isotope ratios from intact enamel. No dense cortical bone for confident age estimation, and critically, severely degraded DNA. The bog keeps what it wants. It dissolves the rest. And what it wanted to keep, in Tollund man's case, was a face so perfectly preserved that it became the most emotionally confronting artifact in European archaeology. The autopsy began in 1950 and has never truly ended. The original examination was conducted at the National Museum of Denmark under difficult conditions. The body was fragile. The technology was limited. But even with the tools of the early 1950s, the essential forensic picture was clear. Tollund man was between 30 and 40 years old at death. He stood approximately 161 centimeters tall. He was not a large man. His hair had been cropped short. He wore a pointed skin cap made of sheepskin and wool, fastened under his chin. He was otherwise naked. No clothing, no tools, no weapons, no jewelry, nothing that would identify rank, occupation, or tribe. The cause of death was ligature strangulation. The braided rope, constructed from 2 leather thongs twisted together, had been drawn around his neck and tightened until death occurred. There were no signs of defensive injuries on his hands or arms, no bruising on his body consistent with a struggle. Either Tollund man did not resist, or he was restrained by means that left no physical trace. The absence of resistance is one of the most debated elements of the case. A man being strangled has every biological imperative to fight. The survival reflex is autonomic. To die by strangulation without evidence of struggle suggests one of 3 possibilities. He was drugged, he was immobilized by multiple people, or he did not fight because he had accepted what was happening to him. His stomach contents were analyzed in the original examination and reanalyzed with modern techniques in 2021. The results were remarkably specific. His last meal, consumed 12 to 24 hours before death, was a porridge made from barley, flax seeds, pale persicaria, fat hen, and sand, roughly 40 different plant species in total, with small quantities of animal protein. It was not a normal meal. The combination of ingredients, several of which are not standard dietary components, but rather plants associated with Iron Age ritual contexts, has led multiple researchers to conclude that this was a deliberately prepared final meal, a ritual meal, consumed as part of the sequence of events that ended with the rope around his neck. The 2021 study also identified intestinal parasites, whipworm and mawworm, confirming that Tollund man lived in conditions typical of Iron Age agricultural communities, where contact with animal waste and contaminated water was routine. He was not elite. He was not pampered. He was an ordinary man, in ordinary health, who ate a very specific and very unusual meal, and then was killed. Tollund man is not alone in the bog. Across Northern Europe, Denmark, the Netherlands, Germany, Ireland, Britain, peat bogs have surrendered more than 1,000 preserved bodies dating from the Neolithic period through the early medieval era. The peak concentration falls in the Iron Age, roughly 500 BCE to 100 CE, and the forensic patterns across these bodies tell a story that individual cases cannot. Graubala man, found 17 kilometers from Tollund man in 1952, had his throat cut from ear to ear. His skull was fractured. His leg was broken. The violence was extreme and multimodal, overkill in forensic terminology, damage far exceeding what is necessary to cause death. Lindo man, found in Cheshire, England, in 1984, suffered what forensic pathologists described as a triple death. He was struck on the head twice, strangled with a cord, and then had his throat cut. 3 methods of killing applied to a single individual in sequence. His last meal, like Tollund man's, contained mistletoe pollen, a plant with deep ritual significance in Celtic and Germanic tradition. White girl, found in the Netherlands in 1897, was approximately 16 years old. She had been strangled with a woolen band and stabbed near the collarbone. Half her head had been shaved. Radiocarbon dating placed her death around 54 BCE. The pattern is unmistakable. These were not battlefield casualties. They were not victims of common murder. They were killed in specific, ritualized ways, often involving multiple methods of death applied to the same body, and then placed in bogs with a degree of care that contradicts the violence of their killing. Bodies were positioned. Eyes were closed. In some cases, objects were placed beside them. The Roman historian Tacitus writing in 98 CE, described Germanic tribal practices that aligned disturbingly with the forensic evidence. Cowards and deserters, he wrote, were submerged in bogs under wicker hurdles, but Tacitus also described the bog as sacred, a boundary between the living and the dead, where offerings were made to gods whose names we no longer know. The forensic question, criminal or sacrifice, may be the wrong question entirely. In Iron Age Northern Europe, the distinction between punishment and offering may not have existed. To be given to the bog may have been both a death sentence and a consecration. The violence and the tenderness may not have been contradictions. They may have been the same act, viewed from two sides of a belief system that saw no boundary between destroying a person and delivering them to the divine. Here is what the forensic evidence can tell us, and here is where it stops. Tollund man was killed by strangulation, deliberately, approximately 2,400 years ago. He ate a ritual meal before his death. He did not resist, or could not resist. He was placed in the bog with care. His eyes were closed. He was not discarded. He was deposited. The bog preserved his face with such fidelity that we can see the expression he wore at the moment of death, or rather, the expression that settled onto his features in the minutes after. It is not an expression of agony. Whether that reflects the actual experience of his death or merely the relaxation of facial muscles post-mortem is a question the soft tissue cannot answer. His DNA is too degraded for the kind of full genomic sequencing that has revolutionized our understanding of Autopsy, Tutankhamun, or the Romanovs. The bog preserved the surface and dissolved the deep structure. We cannot trace his maternal line. We cannot determine his paternal haplogroup. We cannot connect him to a living population with the precision that mitochondrial or Y chromosome analysis allows. He is, in genetic terms, almost entirely silent. And yet he speaks, not through his genome, but through his face, through the stubble on his chin that tells us he had not shaved for several days before his death, through the wrinkles that tell us he had spent decades squinting against weather, through the calm set of his mouth that has led generation after generation of visitors to the Silkeborg Museum to use the same word, peaceful. Whether that peace is real or projected, whether it belongs to Tollund man or to the people who need to see it there, is a question that no forensic technology can resolve. It is the same question that haunted the Anastasia case, the same question that clung to the golden mask of Tutankhamun. What do we see when we look at the dead, the truth of their experience, or the story we need to tell ourselves about it? There is a glass case in a small museum in Silkeborg, Denmark. Inside it, a man lies on his side with his knees slightly drawn up and his eyes closed. He has been lying there since 1950. Before that, he lay in a peat bog for 24 centuries. The leather rope is still around his neck. Visitors stand over him and feel something that is difficult to name. It is not the awe that accompanies the golden treasures of Egypt. It is not the horror of the plaster casts at Pompeii. It is something quieter, something closer to recognition. Because Tollund man does not look ancient. He looks like a specific person with a specific face, who lived a specific life that ended on a specific day, and whose name, whose language, whose private thoughts as the rope tightened, are gone. Dissolved by the same acid that kept his skin intact, the bog preserved everything that could be seen and destroyed everything that could be known. His face survived 24 centuries. His identity did not survive a single one. That is not a failure of science. It is a statement about the nature of evidence itself. Some truths are written in DNA and they endure. Some truths are written in soft tissue, in expression, in the unreadable stillness of a face that should have been dust 2 millennia ago. And some truths, who he was, what he believed, whether he walked to the bog willingly, are written in nothing that survives. The investigation is not closed, but the evidence that would close it is not degraded. It was never recorded. It existed only in the minds of the people who killed him, and they are as gone as his name. What remains is a face. The oldest readable human face on Earth, still calm, still silent, still waiting for a question that science does not know how to ask.